Today we are continuing our stewardship theme throughout the next several weeks, or this past several weeks. And our stewardship theme this year is a living legacy. And if you remember, and if you've read at all the Summit, you get a lot more information about this in my articles in the Summit. A legacy is something that we leave behind for other people. A legacy can be a very positive thing, and it can be a very negative thing. A legacy can be concerned with the money that you leave behind, but it's also about the life that you live. The examples of grace, and an example of hard work, or an example of how many different ways about how you have family or relationships. A legacy is something you leave behind that other people remember you behind. The important thing to remember is that we are always leaving a legacy, either a positive one or a negative one. So our stewardship theme this year is a living legacy. And so we want to think about how we can be stewards of this legacy that we are leaving behind. And a living legacy is a legacy that continues to breathe life into people long after we have gone. Now we remember that it's God who is actually breathing the life into people. But a legacy is just about how we are living our lives today so that we can enable this God-breathing, living legacy to happen, not just today, but for many, many generations to come. The gospel story that I just read is a story where Jesus is having yet another dialogue with his followers, with his disciples, with a large group of people, and he's talking to them about a myth that they believe in and that they're holding on to, that they are indeed free people. And he's pointing out to them that, no, actually, you are enslaved. You are enslaved by your very own sin. However, I, says the Son, and God's truth, specifically the actions that Jesus is going to take, the truth he proclaims, the promises that he gives, they will set you free. Stewardship, I was thinking about this the other day. There's a myth that many people have about stewardship. Just as Jesus was trying to explain away a myth, a false way of thinking that his followers had, I think today, as Christians, we have a number of false ways or myths that we tend to believe in. And one of them is connected to stewardship. And it's connected in this way. Too often we think of stewardship as being, well, a way of paying God back. You know, God's blessed us, he's done so many good things for us, and we need to pay him back, and we need to do things in order to, well, say that we're thank you, you know? And when we think of stewardship as that way, it becomes an obligation, something you ought to do. And that is actually a myth. That's not true. That's not what stewardship is about. Jesus, he outlines that in that conversation with the disciples in the gospel that we read, the passage that we read. Jesus has done a wonderful thing for us. Not only did he die on the cross in order to pay the price for our sin, but he rose from the dead 3 days later to give us this grand gift, this new life that we have. And the new life is marked by freedom as we live in God's grace. Problem is that so often we've accepted this new life, but we fail to live this new life. We go back to our old ways of thinking, our old ways of living. And as a result, because of our own sin that we commit, we continue to be enslaved. So I was thinking about stewardship and this idea, this false idea that it's the obligation. But I think that if we started kind of changing the way we think, we would understand that stewardship is all about structuring our lives so that God's grace can flow through us and change the world around us. It's about kind of letting the floodgates open. Let me give you an illustration. This past week, I woke up and in my basement I discovered water. And it's always a dreadful feeling when you go down to your basement and you see that there's water there, right? It was a small pool, it wasn't a big thing, there was no major flood, no damage or anything. But it's always like, oh, now I gotta figure out what in the world is going on, where's the water coming from? And thanks to Al Garrett, and we brainstormed, we started thinking about what is it that could be allowing the water to come in. And what we figured out was, I needed to build a bank of water to structure my backyard so the water, bank of dirt along the side of my house to raise up the level of earth so that I could structure my backyard so the water would flow away from my house. And so I'm out there doing the hard work of moving soil from a hole I dug in my backyard up against my house so that my yard would be the right structure, the right way, so water would flow in the right direction and wouldn't flood in the basement. Well, actually, I thought, well, I'm doing this, and I get these crazy ideas all the time. But this is kind of like stewardship, if you'll go with me on this. Because stewardship is how we structure our lives, how we make choices, how we build and decide to live so that God's grace can flow freely, so that nothing obstructs it, so that it doesn't go in the wrong way or just pool inside of us and not spread to the world around us. Stewardship is important. It's not an obligation. It's not something we have to do to say thank you to God. It's something that we do that allows God's grace to change our lives and to flow freely into the lives of everyone whom we love. Stewardship is about living. And it's about taking this new life that God has given us and living in such a way so that very thing happens. Today is Reformation Day. Many of us wore red, and that's great. I love seeing that. Reformation is when we celebrate a moment in the church's history. And it wasn't just one day, although this is the day we commemorate it. It was an entire movement that lasted many, many years. And to summarize what the Reformation is about, I want to share a story from Martin Luther. And the story goes like this. Martin Luther was a very frustrated man. He got very angry. He's a very passionate man. He often expressed that passion in his vocabulary. But he was a very frustrated person. He was frustrated because so many Christians were living in a lie. They were living in this myth that they needed to, well, pay God back for all the good things that God had done them. And they paid God back by living a certain way, a certain quote-unquote good life. And the church itself was complicit in this lie through its teachings. And Martin Luther felt that the world was being, that Christians were being enslaved because of this idea. So he began a movement, not to start a new church, but he began a movement to change the way people think, to set people free in that sense. And he wanted to do that to help people understand that they live not to pay God back, not as an obligation, but as a celebration of the freedom that God's grace gives them. They live in such a way that others can experience that God's grace. That goes right hand in hand with our theme about how we want to change the way we think about stewardship. This also, I think, is incredibly relevant and true today. Because I think, okay, what is a myth? Is there something in our lives, besides this idea of stewardship, but is there something in our lives where we think we're believing in a false way of living, in a myth, much like the people in Martin Luther's day did? And I look at our culture around us, and our attitude towards money, oh, it's pretty much one big lie. Our culture has told us that you need to live a certain way, a certain lifestyle, in order for you to be successful, in order for you to have value or meaning in life, right? Materialism, it invades the way we think. And the church is complicit in this, because the church helps to build this idea that, well, if you were blessed by God, or if you were a successful Christian, or if you have faith, then you will also live this certain kind of lifestyle. And nothing could be further from the truth. And so today, and just to demonstrate this, I looked up some statistics for us. Did you know that the average American household today has over $135,000 worth of debt? The average American household has $15,000. I actually have the exact figure here as of September 1st. The average American household has $15,675 in credit card debt. What does that speak to us? It tells us that Americans are believing this myth that in order that we have to live a life that we can't afford, that we can never pay back, and that it's a life beyond us, but we have to do it. We feel compelled to do it because, well, that's what means if you have meaning in life. You got to have a certain car. You got to have a certain size house. You got to do certain things. You got to go on vacation. You got to do this. You got to have that, and that will give you meaning. It's a lie, and we buy into it. So just like Martin Luther was so consumed with this myth, this lie that people were buying into in his day, he wanted to set people free, I think we need to be the same way. We need to dispel this myth that somehow we need to live a certain life And we become enslaved by our debt and by our attitude towards money. And this is an important thing. This is where I'm getting at. We have become so enslaved by these ideas and enslaved to money. It is a legacy that we are leaving behind for the next generation. We are building a debt of living that we're just passing on to the people beyond. To our children and our grandchildren and our great-grandchildren. And it's a legacy of how we live. And it's so important that we stop and we think God has freed us. He's freed us from this need to have so much stuff in order to give us meaning, because God has given us meaning and the love and the grace that He has given us. Two important things are coming up, ways that we can kind of get a hold of this, grasp this, respond to this. And I wanted to highlight these two things, because our theme in stewardship is to structure our lives so that God's grace can flow, so that we can leave a legacy that breathes life into people. And as we think of our lives right now, many of us are living a legacy of debt, a legacy of living a life that the next generation can't afford, and a legacy that in order to have meaning in life, you've got to have certain stuff. So we need to change that. We need to be challenged by this truth. So there are two events that are coming up that I think that can really help us. And the first is this. Can you go to the next slide? I'm going to make sure I get the date right. On Wednesday, November 16th, we're going to have Anthony O'Neill head our church. And Anthony O'Neill is from the Dave Ramsey Foundation, and he's going to be talking to us about your financial future. It's just that important, about financial freedom, and about how we can structure our lives and not live in debt so that we can experience the power of generosity. And that's so, so important for us. It's so important for young people as well to start learning about how to live a life that is debt-free, that is not enslaved to the ideas of money, that we have to have stuff in order to have meaning. And so this is a powerful speaker, a powerful seminar. So mark your calendars. Let people know. Let your neighbors, your cousins, your children, your grandchildren, everybody. This is a great opportunity to be challenged and to learn practically how to live and not be enslaved to money. That's the first thing. The second thing is that in 2 weeks we're going to have a celebration Sunday. And we're going to come together, one service at 10 o'clock, and then afterwards we're going to have a meal together. And the theme of that meal is we're going to talk about our Alpine Endowment. And our Alpine Endowment is a great way for us to start structuring our lives so that the tithe that we give, we can keep giving long after we are gone. And so I want to challenge you to come to that meeting. Find out how you can keep tithing, not just for the end of your life, but for generations to come. But in order to do that, you've got to structure your thinking, structure your life, structure your giving, so that your legacy can be one that breathes life into people long after you are gone. One last illustration. This is a story from a man named Alan Barnhart, sorry. Alan Barnhart, when he was in university, was challenged by this concept of generosity that he felt Jesus was teaching. So he and his wife, after they graduated, decided that they were going to live on 1 cent income, an income that allowed them to have a comfortable life. But they would not increase their income throughout the years as they lived, but they would stay at that income, and as they made more money, if they did, they would just continue to give all that money to God. So they said, this is how much we need to live. Everything that we make beyond that, we're going to give to God. When he and his brother first took over the family business, they kept to this principle. And after the first year, they were able to give incredibly $50,000 to different ministries and charities and to the church. And they thought, oh, this is great. And as they worked and their business grew, they stuck to this living at one certain level. So in 2 years' time, they were actually able to double that. They were able to give $100,000. And then in 5 years' time, they were actually able to give $150,000. And by 2005, they were actually giving $1 million a month. And when he tells this story about how he's able to give, the reason they were able to give this is largely because, one, they had agreed to stay living at a certain economic level. And everything they got beyond that, they weren't going to consider as rewards for good work. they were going to consider as opportunities to be generous. And he said he learned so much about generosity as their giving grew. And then what he learned was the joy and the ministry of being a generous person. And it became contagious. The more they did it, the more they just wanted to give, because it was such a wonderful experience. It was never an obligation. It was never a way of paying God back. It was them structuring their lives so that God's grace could flow through them into the lives of others. That's what they wanted to do. And I thought, well, that's a great picture of stewardship. Amen? Amen. Our takeaways for today: stewardship is about freedom. It's about structuring our lives so that God's grace can flow. The second takeaway: cultivating generosity is the key to counteracting our culture's influence on us. Our culture is teaching us constantly, you need to think about yourself, you need to worry about your future, you need to live a certain life and have lots of stuff. How do you counteract that incredible influence? Cultivate generosity in your life. That's what Alan Barnhart did. Let's stand for our song of the day.